So oftentimes, like the people who are like running rehearsals for you don't know that much about like your rehearsal needs and stuff. So a lot of times I think that battery caption heads assume that cymbals will play the same role in an ensemble or want the same role in an ensemble.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Flip Up Podcast. Today, we are joined with another guest. We have Molly Gormley from GMU and Jersey Surf.
Cool. Yeah. And before we kick things off, we want to thank you guys. We've been getting so much support lately. I'd say at the time we're filming this, because we do have a little delay before we release these, probably about like 2 to 3 weeks. But around the time this is out, we're nearly close to 100 followers on Instagram, which is really awesome. So we really appreciate the support you guys are giving on our social media platforms and just to the podcast alone. Because, our goal is to educate you guys and get you guys informed on what's going on in the cymbal community. And kind of side note off of that, Carly, one of the people who we've marched with at GMU, she made us these really cool signs. Sorry if my audio is kind of clipping. But
yeah, these are super awesome. She just randomly made them for us.
Yeah, and we definitely would like to have Carly on at one point. So that will be in the future works. But yeah, super thankful that, we now have something to kind of represent our podcast in the background. But, once, we're both in college. So once, we get settled in like a place where we can really do these podcasts, because, this location is temporary, we can hopefully just, make a place our studio or something like that. So.
Dude, get like all the foam and stuff in the background.
Yeah, dude, soundproof the wall and everything. So
we'll fly our guests in. Get Molly on a private jet.
Yeah, Molly, you interested on a flying carpet?
Ooh.
Yeah, I would definitely like the flying carpet route, but I would also accept a private jet as a second choice.
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, why don't you introduce yourself, Molly, and kind of go over your marching experience.
So I guess my marching experience started in high school band, like it does for everyone. I always knew I was gonna do marching band. I had three older sisters who all went through the program and like grew up watching their competitions. And my high school marching band program was just like really well done. Our director Jason Marizak just always had like a really he put a really good staff together. Why are you laughing?
All right, that's all the time we got for today.
Yeah, be sure to tune in next time.
Dude, I was like, we started it, and I was like, oh, I don't know if we can do this joke anymore. We're already like going so well. But then Jaden started laughing, and it made me start laughing. I was like, I gotta do it now.
Yeah, Molly, before you joined the call and everything, we were planning this out for like 20 minutes. We were like, yo, we should prank Molly. Oh, for more context on this, we would prank Molly all the time at GMU. So this is not foreign.
Yeah, this is my life.
Wait, is this still the episode?
This is my marching story. We can just replace all of it with just being pranked and bullied.
Yeah. And yes, this is still the episode. I'm keeping this in. So yeah. Cool. Let's back things up now. Oh yeah, and if you're on Spotify, this is a plug now. Go watch this on YouTube to get the live reaction. I mean, I really think like it is nice to, we use the Spotify so that you can listen wherever, but I think getting a visual representation of things is also very important. So check out our YouTube also, not just our Spotify. But anyways, let's backtrack again. Let's do this formally. Molly, why don't you go ahead and formally introduce yourself? You can pick up where you left off.
From the top.
Okay,
we apologize.
But wait, first of all, what was the prank? Was the prank just that you were smiling at me?
No, it's because we ended it early.
Oh.
Man,
all right,
we gotta put in the title. We gotta say, epic fail goes horribly wrong.
Okay, this is a great start. Okay, so anyway, like most people, I started in high school marching band. Anyway, the high school I went to, Upper Darby, just was like really well done program. Our director just like did a really good job. So it was very easy for me to want to get involved with it. So I was originally a flute player, piccolo too. Also was drum major for a little bit. But what wasn't as like known that I was going to do was indoor drumline. That kind of like fell in my lap later. I didn't really know much about it until I got to high school. My sister had done it, but like it just wasn't something that was in my life for very long, like leading up to being a part of it. But the cymbal tech, my tech Yvonne Brandt, just like came up to me at a marching band rehearsal, and because she liked my sister Carrie, she just like automatically wanted to be on the line too. That's just kind of how my life has worked. Like people like my older siblings, so they just assume I'll be good too. I don't know if she got exactly what she bargained for, but I ended up staying on the cymbal line for all 4 years of indoor. It was just like a really wonderful experience. Like we won like a Scholastic Open medal. We like got promoted to Scholastic World. So that program was like just started everything for me. And I think I would have been like satisfied if that was all I did. But so I didn't necessarily have it in my plan to march independent WGI after that. But after my freshman year of college, I was just like, there's something missing from my life. Like the marching arts, that feels so very me, like the people in the process of it, that it just felt really wrong to not be doing it anymore. So I ended up auditioning for George Mason. Wasn't super like aware of the group before that. I mean, I'd seen them perform at WGI finals, but like I didn't grow up in Nova, so I wasn't like following GMU all that closely. So I just kind of like showed up to auditions and like didn't know what to expect. And it was a good thing that it was not a very competitive audition because I was like really struggling to hold the cymbals up. It had been like a year since I had played. And I think that like preparation and skill is like so important, but I also think that we have to be real about when we were just in the right place at the right time. And I was just in the right place at the right time at that audition. Made it, and then ended up staying there for 4 years. It just like every time a new season came, Mason was just still clearly the right place for me to go back to. I mean, there was a sense of loyalty to it, but it was also just like, it was always the right place for me. The group was just progressing at a level that matched like where I was progressing to. So it just always made sense. And then I also did not think I would ever march DCI. That was not in the books for me. But because while I was marching Mason, like you just end up around people who also march drum corps, and like those conversations of like them telling me drum corps stories ended up becoming them telling me like, oh my gosh, you would love drum corps, you would be so good at drum corps. I never thought of myself as a person who would be good at that. So the fact that I had friends who were telling me, like validating me that that was something that I would be good at, was huge. And so I ended up deciding to march the summer of drum corps. There was kind of a whole like roundabout path that led me and all the other people who went to surf that year or back to surf that year, but I ended up there. I had just like a really influential summer there with Brian Kendrick and my crew of cymbal players. They taught me so much, and I feel like that really propelled me into the next level of like loving cymbals, and getting them and being good at them, to kind of like take me back to Mason and be the section leader there for like the last 4 years, or the last 2 years. And then now I finished, well, I kind of finished my first year teaching at Imperial Dynasty, which is an open class group in Wilmington, Delaware. Obviously our season got cut short. And I'm also currently the cymbal tech at the Bushwhackers Drum Corps, New Jersey. So yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to teach how I can and when I can during this weird time, but I'm excited for like the teaching side of my career that hasn't really happened all that much yet just because of COVID. But
Yeah. Something you brought up, which is kind of funny because it kind of correlates with me and Lucas. I don't think either one of us were planning to march DCI either. And I mean, you were there for that, but in Mason 2018, I don't think, well, I mean, for one, lines were just, getting cut and going out the window, but like we had no intentions of ever marching. But it really is true, though, the people you're surrounded by heavily impacts the decisions you make in this activity. I strongly believe that. Like our tech Megan, in 2018, and just Molly and David, who was another person we marched with, like everyone was just like kind of pushing us to just go out there and do it, and it was one of the smartest decisions we could have made in our DCI career, and not DCI career, but just cymbal career. And I think you can agree with us. Like I think us doing that, and even yourself, I think just getting that one summer of DCI just completely changed the way we've been approaching cymbals.
Yeah, and that was also kind of just right place at the right time because we were told to go there and we were like, oh, but it's scouts. But like what you were saying about that whole, like, you may not have been like perfectly or like the perfect fit, but right place, right time. They were looking for people. We kind of just showed up. But I guess for more context for us, like we've known Molly for such a long time because when we first got into Mason, Molly was already there, and we'd already seen her marching there when we were in high school. We'd watch GMU, we'd see Molly doing Crystallize and that show. But yeah, so you've been pretty inspiring for us as like a member, and now as you're going into your teaching career.
Yeah, and I guess because you were talking about like GMU wasn't local for us, like GMU was our local drum line, and like they're world class. They were the top thing in our area, and like that was what we looked up to, aspired to be a part of. What was that line, or maybe not so much a line, but like was there like a specific ensemble in the area that like inspired you to keep playing cymbals in your area, or was it completely outside your area?
Um, I guess like the line that I always looked up to in high school was probably like MCM. Just like in the early 2010s, that was just like the cymbal line. Like in my mind, wasn't any other cymbal line for me to like go to their lots. Like they were the ones who were like innovating at that time. So for me, like they were the people that I went to those lots. I mean, I always knew that that wasn't an option for me, like in my mind, because I wasn't a guy. So I found other options that ended up being like way better fits for me anyway. But Mason honestly was, when I was in high school, like their 2013 line. That was like, I thought they were like so cool. And I remember my tech that year was like, if you go march anywhere after high school, like George Mason was really good, like go there. And that did kind of stick with me, even though Mason wasn't local to our area, like that they were inspiring to me. And yeah, I feel like I think what I was more motivated by was just like my love for the activity and the process. Like I feel like just going to WGI finals was enough for me. Like seeing those independent world groups and like seeing that atmosphere, that I wanted to be a part of that. Like I don't think I was as picky about where I was going to march.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing you said earlier about um, kind of you not being a male, so you didn't feel MCM was the right place. How do you think, I guess, being a woman in the cymbal community has impacted your marching career?
I think it's impacted in like every way. It's hard to separate, what has been me versus like my gender versus like my luck. But I do think, I mean, because I think the more we innovate cymbals and the higher caliber that we have for it, like the faster motions that we accept as like fast enough, and like the new types of visuals where like you need like longer arms or like bigger hands if they're like going like under your arm, or like you're holding the edge of the cymbal. I think it's getting harder and harder for women to be able to like physically perform like at the same level at like an audition as a guy, just for pure like physical, from a pure physical standpoint. Like I think a guy who hadn't trained at all coming to an audition would perform better than a woman who hadn't trained at all. So first of all, you have to train like 2 times as much to be at the same level. um, so there's just like the physical aspect of it, but there's also the options that you have. I mean, for a while when I was marching, I mean, I loved the Madison Scout symbol line, like loved that symbol line, but it just like wasn't in the cards for me. There was also like symbol lines that weren't technically all male, but you know that some techs just prefer that. So it does feel limiting, especially in DCI, because in WGI there's a lot more options, but in DCI there's so few symbol lines to begin with. And then to know that like there's an all male corps that has a symbol line. There's also like groups like SCV, which not that they don't take women, but it's certainly like not as much in their tradition. So it can be frustrating, but I do think that we've done a better job at like in recent years of like adapting things so that it's easier for girls to succeed. Like for example, I had a tech who was a woman, Megan. She was the first tech who ever was like, you need to be on 17-inch cymbals. Like, why are you playing on 18-inch cymbals? Your arms are not long enough for that. And that was huge for me. I thought I was a bad cymbal player until I just used 17-inch cymbals. But yeah, I think that the more women that we have becoming techs in the marching arts and being able to make that impact of like understanding what it feels like to have a smaller body and like giving their students the option to succeed better by like providing resources for them to do better. I think the more that we can like make sure that we are like making cymbals a place where women can succeed, I think the more that we'll see women succeeding as cymbal players.
Yeah. You're bringing up points about how, you know, having a female tech and then opening up these different ideas. Specifically, you're talking about like 17-inch cymbals. Just for more context of like what's going on in the community right now. So what's today? It's like February. So at the time we're filming this is like February 2021. There are so many female cymbal players out there now than there have ever been back in like 10 years ago, which at Jersey Surf, for example, right, which was one of the lines, I'm talking about 2017 specifically, which was the line that Molly marched. 4 out of the 5 of you were female. And then, you know, there was Adrian, who was the other cymbal player who marched that surf, who was a boy. And then we have Colts in, I want to say 2015. They had a lot of females on the line, and they were a great line also. Redline 2017 had a lot of females, and they were an amazing line. And I can't speak on West Coast behalf, but SCV, for example, they recently had a female on the cymbal line. And I got to say, in 2018 specifically, because I didn't really see much in 2019, but in 2018, my God, their line was really, really clean. Like, they looked visually and they played really clean. Like, yes, they did win that year, but their cymbal line was, well, they are really good, but I thought that line was something really special. But on top of that, like, just not even like performers, like techs, like cymbal techs, like I'd say half of the techs I've ever had in this community have been females. And I feel like they've been some of the best techs I've ever had. Like, I can't choose a favorite, but like, I feel like I've learned something completely new from their perspective. So like this whole stereotype of like, you're female, so we're going to put you like in the pit or something like that. I'm just making up. That doesn't mean that, but I'm just saying like the stereotype of like men are just known to look the biggest on a cymbal line. Like, it's just so false in this activity.
Yeah, I think it's important to look to these people as inspiration. Look at Molly. She's a super vet at GMU. But another really great point you brought up was the 17 cymbals. Because I think that like the first thing that popped in my mind was like that old analogy of like, oh, you give everyone a test and it's like making a fish climb a tree. Like, just having like the physical limitations and then still being expected to hold the same symbol as everyone else, it just doesn't really make sense anymore. And I think it's good that now we're actually starting to challenge that and be like, oh, if it's going to look the same, why not just give them smaller cymbals? Like, it's only an inch. Like, we honestly couldn't tell when Molly had the 17s. And then you're just able to do so much more. It just feels much more natural. But those kind of accommodations are pretty great and should be done more.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I think that like 20 years, like 15, 20 years ago, I think it was more common for women to be on cymbal lines. I feel like that was like a place in the battery where like women could thrive because there wasn't as much of like the crazy visual aspect to it. Like sound quality was like more of the focus, and there are like rich history of like Crossmen always had like women on their cymbal line, at least in my experience, like seeing them. I'm not all that old, but I think like they've had a pretty like rich history of that. Spirit had like early Spirit cymbal lines in like the 2000s, like often had women on their cymbal lines. So it's not like a new thing. I think that we maybe for the past like 10 years we kind of hit a point where like so many cymbal lines had mostly male men on them, but I think that now we are getting to a point where like we're kind of like having this renaissance of like women cymbal players, because I think for a while it was very hard. I think techs were looking for something in a cymbal player and had this vision because of like, especially because of MCM. They were the cymbal line that innovated so much starting in like 2010. So our vision, what we thought of as like a good cymbal player was a man like on MCM, and that's just natural because those were the good cymbal players we were seeing. But I do think that just like the prevalence of female techs and like them being able to like have a different vision for what a cymbal line could look like, and again making accommodations for making sure that it's like a positive environment for girls, I think has been really important. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did discredit, some other lines that do have females. The ones I was kind of listing before were kind of the lines that kind of, I would say, almost motivated me in a way to do what I'm doing. Like they're the lines that it was like, oh, like this is the kind of approach I want to have throughout this activity. But just to name some other lines that like have a lot of females that like they were really good. Is like you were saying, Crossman. I think it was 2017. Half of them were female, I think, and that line like they were good. Um, and then not forgetting this past year, Spirit 2019. That was a good line also. And I'm sorry also if I can't speak on West Coast behalf because, as an East Coast player, you tend to watch more East Coast videos. So, but
Yeah, I don't know anything about West Coast. Anything I say, you can just assume it's about East Coast because I'm not going to speak on that tradition. It's just not like my world.
mm-hmm.
A later
Yeah.
episode, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get
hopefully.
some West Coast in here.
Yeah. Cool. So, sorry, I was looking at kind of notes I've been taking, but so something else I want to talk about, and we've kind of had this experience at Mason, and it's kind of this understanding between what's expected of a cymbal line and kind of the relationships that are formed between a cymbal line and ensemble. And I like this is something we can talk about for hours on end, but like I guess just kind of talk about like the experiences you've had with your expectations as a member on a cymbal line.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times on a cymbal line, like usually your battery caption head is not going to be a cymbal player. Like I don't think I've ever had, I don't know any battery caption heads who are cymbal players. So oftentimes like the people who are like running rehearsals for you don't know that much about like your rehearsal needs and stuff. So a lot of times I think that battery caption heads assume that cymbals will play the same role in an ensemble or want the same role in an ensemble that like the other members of the battery have. Like I think a lot of times battery caption heads will just assume that cymbals like want more notes. Like that's how cymbal players are cool, is like when they play more notes. And I'm not saying that that isn't cool, but I think there's kind of like this mentality that I've had in ensembles where it's like look, Cymbaline, you do your thing. Like, we don't get it, but like we will let you do it. And that's great. Like I'd much rather that than like someone who's like overseeing what the Cymbaline's doing and like having opinions that are like wrong and just trying to like micromanage the Cymbaline in ways that they don't know how to do. But I think that on the other side of that, there's often like when they're not involved in what the Cymbaline's doing and they're letting the Cymbaline just kind of do their own thing, sometimes there can be a breakdown in communication of like, okay, we're working on this visual. We've been working on it for like 2 weeks, and then suddenly like the show's changed so that we can't do that visual. And I'm not saying that obviously like this ensemble comes first, and the Cymbaline's visual should not like overshadow the design needs of the ensemble. But I think that consideration would be different for like a snare feature because the captain head and all the techs are involved in like writing that. They understand that the snare line's been working on it. Whereas with the Cymbaline, they just don't understand necessarily like what the Cymbaline's been working on, how important something is to them. Um, and I think that like as I become like a cymbal tech, I mean I already am, but I'm still very young. I think that like communication about like what the Cymbaline wants, what's important to them is like super important between like the cymbal tech and the other techs. I'm not saying that that isn't already happening in ensembles, but I do think that there can be like a better awareness. I think just, non-cymbal techs following your podcast and just like listening along could do wonders for them just understanding like, what we're looking for, what we want our role in the ensemble to be.
That's true. That's true. Get all your techs in here. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously the three of us have experienced this firsthand because in 2019 we had a feature that we worked on for quite a while. We had all this stuff going on, and then it was just kind of taken away just out of nowhere, which, I mean, it's fine. It worked better for the ensemble to have their other moment, but I mean, I guess it's just that feeling of putting in a lot of time into something and then just all of that time kind of feeling wasted. So I guess for techs to understand better what we're doing so that instead of having it be completely wasted, maybe it could just be put somewhere else or used in a different way. But yeah, I feel like as a cymbal player, there's a lot of times where we put a lot of time into something and then it just goes to nothing.
Yeah, it cannot be said better. But at Mason, right, in 2018, I'd say that's when we were probably experiencing the worst of it, just like that sort of disconnect. But the thing is, like the culture we've built and like the experiences we've had through DCI, and also just, I would say the staff at Mason also has a very high standard now of understanding our culture now. Like in 2018, it was just kind of like, you guys know what you need to do it. But then like in 2019, then we had like visual heads, like, well, one of them was a cymbal player, let alone, but they start to get intertwined and curious about like, whoa, you guys can do this. And we also had a choreographer, and like, on top of being good cymbal players, we were good at body also that year. So like there was that connection of like, can you guys do this with your cymbals with body? So like we had this one visual, which was all cymbal written, but we did a dance move. What was it? The macaco? No, that
No,
wasn't it.
the coffee grinder.
Coffee grinder, yes, yeah. So we did a coffee grinder into a cymbal visual, and that was probably the most coolest thing we could have ever done with cymbals and body. So there is things you can do where there shouldn't feel like there's a disconnect. Like I would honestly say that anyone visually should have more of a connection to cymbals than any other aspect in the ensemble, because that's all we do with our hands. But then the last point I was going to say is, then in 2020, now we have people sort of asking our inputs on things, which was something completely foreign to us, making sure that things were done that would work for us, which was nice. But now we need to get to that point where techs need to understand why that needs to happen. I feel like some techs also, or just directors, anything, they understand what cymbals can do, but they don't understand how it's executed. So they just let the cymbals do their thing. And I think that's where that disconnect is. And we've also had this one tech at Mason who wrote our book for cymbals. And I think the coolest thing he's ever done was just sit in sectionals and literally just watch us just do our thing, like playing, doing the visuals, and understanding our culture. Like that is probably the coolest thing anyone could ever do.
Yeah, if you could have a tech that is just like genuinely curious about symbols and wants to learn more about it and actually thinks that it's cool, like I feel like that's the best possible situation. Because we had in 2020, I think it was the best for us, where the staff actually was looking towards the symbols for their input and stuff like that. But there are moments where they'd come up and they'd be like, okay, so we have this part in the show that we're thinking of doing. Could you guys do like a visual, something to like draw the attention from the people watching? But just having that input where it's like, oh, we actually have like a little part of the design of the show going on where it's like, this is our moment where we're kind of connecting with the audience and we're actually being told to do it, which is really awesome. And then, as Jaden was saying, having that one tech that would sit in and watch and just be curious with what we're doing, trying to learn more. But yeah.
Yeah. And that's like a multi-year process that we just kind of talked about. Like, I think it, like in 2019, we had that like coffee grinder visual where we like putting our symbols on was like a moment for us. And I think that was just like totally something that like we came up with. And they were like, oh my gosh, what are the symbols doing over there? Like, that's so cool. And then I noticed that like in 2020, when you guys picked up your symbols, you were staged in the very front because now they saw that and they knew, oh, this is what the symbol line can do. All right, we're going to feature them like that. So it takes like seasons to start to like, for text to start to pay attention to that and like understand it and be like, okay, now this is how we can utilize them in the ensemble like this, in ways that aren't just like lots of notes like drummers like. And yeah, that's like a super big, really important thing. And I'm not saying that like I really appreciate in some ways when texts are like, look, you know better than me. You deal with the symbol line. Like I trust you. But I do think that sometimes when it almost comes across as like we don't really care what the symbol line's doing. And I know they don't mean that, but I think that it could be even better for them to take a genuine interest in what the symbol line's doing and like genuinely collaborate them with them on what they're able to do. And I think that over like the years that I was at Mason, that relationship between symbol line and like design team and like symbol line and like battery staff just became stronger and stronger over time. It just takes a while to kind of like establish that relationship and establish what your symbol line wants to be in the ensemble. Some symbol lines, they're going to want a symbol feature every year. They're going to want you to throw as many notes as you can throw at them, and they're going to like love that, and that's going to be their strength. Other symbol lines, they're going to want like the space to do just like a ton of visuals. Like they're going to want you to stage them in a way where their visuals are going to be seen. Some symbol lines are going to want to be like a part of the storytelling aspect of the show. I think that's Mason has formed this like interesting relationship between symbol line and ensemble that has taken like years of like important work between an effort on like both ends, which I don't know. I think totally you could tell in 2020 that you guys were now fully implemented into the ensemble in a unique way that totally matched the character of like the GMUCL.
Yeah, definitely. But with that last point, that is actually all the time we have for this episode. Molly, thank you for being here.
Oh, I got this. I got this.
All
All right.
right.
So Molly, the last thing, if there's anything you could say to any cymbal player, what would it be?
Moment of truth.
You know what I want to say to cymbal players?
Could be something really mean. She's like, I want.
March camp coming up for the Bushwhackers Drum and Bugle Corps. If you're a cymbal player, look, we know DCI this year, it's kind of like a shot in the dark. You don't know what's going to happen. There's so many ifs, ands, or buts. You have a way better chance of marching in DCA. It's a local group. We have plans to move forward. So Come to the Bushwhackers camp in March. Look it up. Joinbush.org.
Yeah, you guys would also have someone who definitely knows what they're talking about. So definitely consider auditioning at Bushwhackers. I can't speak on whatever else has happened in DCI, but like, some of you that are in high school who think, like, oh, I'm like, I don't know how to play cymbals. Like, we've been talking about it since the beginning of these podcast episodes. Like, just put yourself out there. Just give it a chance. Know your place. Like, what was it? In 2017, I can't speak on my end, but like Lucas got cut at Jersey Surf. Like, it happens to all of us. Like some of the best. Like I can name a few, but I don't want to speak on their end. But just put yourself out there. Trust me.
Yes, and you wanna learn from Molly. She's a great teacher. You're gonna love this experience.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Cool. Sweet. So we'll end this one off here. Thank you guys for checking out our podcast. Last thing before we go, we want to start getting people that you guys are interested in. I put out a thing on Instagram asking who you guys want to see on the podcast. So please be sure to either comment in this YouTube video, comment on our Instagram, heck, just DM us. Like, we want to know what you guys want to know. So please get in contact with us. And yeah, so it's the end of, I don't even know what episode this is because we might be going out of order. I think this is 8. Who knows? But thanks for being here for the podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.